What's going on, guys? My name's Elliot, or BlindsideUK. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Here we like to talk about stuff going on in gaming recently. Sometimes whatever's going on Twitter. At the moment, I'm going to be talking about E3. So, as most of you will know, we've just finished day one, and there is one game that stands out to me above all the rest. No, it's not Madden. No, it's not FIFA. It is, of course, Star Wars: The Fallen Order. During this video, I'm going to try and look at what it was we actually saw during that gameplay footage. Try and break it down and see, what does this mean? What kind of control system we're looking at? What kind of playstyle are we looking at? But before we get too deep into what it was that we've seen, what about older Star Wars games? So that we can maybe look and compare a bit. Personally, I was a huge fan of the KOTOR series. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2 were some huge games from my childhood. We also had Force Unleashed and Force Unleashed 2, which did pretty well in reviews. I haven't actually played them through yet, but they are on the list for my Twitch channel for my Finish It Fridays, so hopefully I'll get a chance to play those through before Fallen Order comes out. But how can we talk about recent EA Star Wars games without looking at Star Wars Battlefront 2? Which got absolutely bottomed out in user reviews, mostly because of very aggressive microtransactions that kind of ruined the experience for people, and whilst they said it wasn't pay to win, it definitely gave the impression of pay to win. Thankfully, EA have confirmed that Fallen Order is entirely single player, which means there's no real opportunity to put in those aggressive microtransactions that Battlefront 2 had. Personally for me, I'm willing to give EA another chance. I didn't get into Battlefront 2 because of those microtransactions, but this game has definitely got my attention. So let's start having a look at it. So when you're looking at a game, what is the first thing that you see? It's not the graphics. It's not the way the character moves. It's not the animations. It is, of course, the user interface. So let's take a look at that right now. As you can see on the screen, the user interface is minimalistic, showing really nothing apart from your health bar. Also, next to that, you see the amount of stim packs that you have available to you. Your force power bar, which seems to be a standard Star Wars bar that shows how much force power you have available to you, and each force power used will use a small amount of that bar, or maybe even later on in the game, larger amounts depending on the force power that is being used. The final bar on your character's end of the UI appears to be a stamina or posture bar, but we will look into that a bit later when we start looking at the combat style of this game. And the final thing that seems to stick out on the screen is actually the enemy has a health bar, but also you can see their stamina or posture very similarly to the way that Sekiro works. The other thing that you'll notice on the screen is on Cal's shoulder, there is a little droid who has been affectionately named BD1, standing for Buddy Droid 1, who seems to actually have some in-game uses. We see during the gameplay he accepts a data card from Cal, and then he gets a local map. He's also seen scanning, hacking, and overcharging certain machines and causing them to act in different ways.
You had no idea that was there, did you? You just wanted to turn that cutter on.
The final thing with BD1, and the thing that I really love, I think it's a really nice touch, is that the back of its head has a light on it that changes colour depending on your health bar, which with a minimalistic UI, like Fallen Order seems to have, you can't always be looking away from what's happening in the game and looking down at your health bar. So this is actually a really nice way to make it so that you know when you're lower on health and need to start fighting more defensively, or when your health is higher and you can get away with making some riskier moves. So we've had a look at the UI, including BD1 and the way that he's useful. Also BD1's interactions with the environment around you, but how does Cal interact with the environment? Well, besides the standard moving around, running, jumping, there are a few features that he seems to have. One of those is the classic Jedi double jump, giving a little flourish of a flip in there, which is always appreciated by Star Wars fans. We also see some new stuff. We see wall running. You can climb, which seems to be on the left trigger for the Xbox controls, which means I'm assuming the PlayStation 2 will be on L2. Cal can also be seen swimming, although we haven't seen any diving or underwater gameplay, but we don't know whether it's going to be in there or not. Something I really did like about the exploration is that at one point you see Cal exploring a cave that's too dark to see, and he draws his lightsaber and actually uses it as a light source, which I think really lends itself to the Jedi in the way that they are happy to use anything at their disposal to overcome pretty much any obstacle that they're going to be faced with. The final thing that I noticed whilst traversing the world and getting around whilst not in combat is that actually interacting with the world seems to be on the R3 button or clicking the right thumbstick. Obviously this leaves the face buttons more open to things like jumps or dodges or generally any other commands. I do quite like this though. Realistically, if you think about it, when interacting with the world, it's not something you're going to be doing in high octane moments or times when you're in a rush. And therefore, having it on the R3 button does kind of make sense. In calmer times you can use a button that's maybe harder to access, but it gives you more face buttons available for other commands and inputs. Now we can start getting into the real meaty stuff, and we can start looking at force powers and combat. We see very early in the demo that we have the standard double jump as seen in most Star Wars movies, Star Wars games, as what I would guess is an extension for this, based on my experience with Knights of the Old Republic. The double jump also seems to span out into a combat dash, letting you leap up to enemies and get that quick first attack in. Some force staples we also have available to us is force push, force pull. There's a force stop or freeze. We can see Cal using this in combat to stop blaster bolts. Also at one point when fighting these large spiders, he stops one spider to focus on fighting the other so that he's not being attacked on a flank. Another Star Wars game staple is the lightsaber throw, which we see Cal use once on an unsuspecting stormtrooper. The one force usage in combat that you could be forgiven for missing is there appears to be a heavy attack that Cal uses at one point, which does deplete his force bar without seeming to be massively fast or with a huge force style leap. So potentially you can use some of your force bar to augment an attack and cause more damage or maybe make it unblockable. Potentially you'll find this within the skill trees. Speaking of skill trees, we saw the leveling up or gaining a skill point, and it was alluded to in the panel by the devs that if you fought in more exciting ways, you would gain more skill points. The one thing we haven't seen is skill trees. Potentially, and this is entirely speculation on my part, I'd like to see a skill tree for lightsaber combat, a skill tree for force powers, and maybe a skill tree even for BD1, giving him more abilities or making his abilities more useful in combat maybe. But this is of course at the moment just speculation. We haven't seen anything to do with the skill trees, so we'll have to wait on that one. Of course there's going to be some of you out there thinking, what's the point in having the force powers if I can't beat people up with them? So let's have a look at the combat. This game does seem to have a lot of combat in it, and I might be biased because I'm currently playing through Sekiro, but the combat style looks very similar. The lock-on has a very similar UI. The way you block and deflect looks almost identical. I would probably even go out to say that the block button probably is on L1 or left button. As we saw earlier when we were talking about the UI, you have a stamina bar, and it seems that that bar doesn't go down if you perfectly deflect attacks, but it does go down if you are holding a sustained block, or you're using that sustained block to deflect blaster bolts away from you. Each time one of these things happens, you do lose a small amount of this bar, which makes it seem very similar to Sekiro's style but backwards. If you're not feeling your luck or your skill when it comes to deflecting and blocking attacks, we also have dodge steps available to you. Moving out of the way of an attack may not cause any damage to your enemy's stamina, but it does give you an opening to maybe try and get a few attacks in. Another thing that seems to support the idea of Sekiro-style combat is once you get that stamina bar down, you do get guaranteed hits. There doesn't appear to be killing blows the same way that Sekiro has, until of course you get the enemy's health to 0, but when you get the stamina bar all the way down, they do have to seem to take a second and they are unable to block, so you can get some guaranteed damage off. During the combat a couple of times, we do see on-screen QTEs, and also one other prompt. But the QTEs seem to be mostly button mash, so when the spiders web you, you slam B as much as you can, break out of the web, and later on when you get attacked by a giant spider dropping from the ceiling, it lands on you and we have another one of these QuickTime events where you bash the B button and you get a chance to dodge out the way. This leads me to assume that the B button, or the circle on the PlayStation, will be the dodge step button. The other screen prompt that I notice, and is again, it is very Sekiro style, is these new troopers that we see that in the panel the devs did say were designed purely for this game. Some kind of Jedi Hunter trooper. During one of their attacks, they glow red. Now in Sekiro, you would have seen, if you've played the game, that some attacks are unblockable attacks, and a red kanji will appear over the enemy's head as they're about to make this attack. This looks very similar to me. At no point do we see Cal try and block one of these attacks, but generally the player that was in control of Cal for this gameplay footage, he pretty much seems to dodge step those attacks every time they come out, rather than even trying to deflect them. Finally, during the combat, we see a few interesting combinations of force powers. At one point, Cal Force pulls a stormtrooper into his grip, and then Force pushes the stormtrooper into another trooper. Another time, a blaster bolt is frozen in midair, the trooper is pulled to Cal, and he maneuvers the trooper in front of his own blaster bolt, and he shoots himself in the back, which, whilst looking really cool, is also kind of funny. So it's nice that they've put things like this into the game to let us really fight the combat the way that we want to fight it. So we've seen how Cal is gonna fight throughout the game, but how about looking at some of the things that he's gonna be fighting? Most of the gameplay that we see, he's fighting troopers. He is generally cutting troopers down in about one hit, deflecting blaster bolts, doing all the things that Jedis do when they fight troopers. One of the other things that we did see was what I'm calling the Jedi Hunter troopers, with these long two-handed weapons. When Cal first approaches one, the trooper says this.
A Jedi. This is what I'm trained for.
Which leads you to believe that these guys are trained specifically for Order 66 to go around and take out the Jedi Order. In the E3 panel, the devs did say that these troopers were specifically created for this game, so we haven't seen them before. Another thing we see Cal fighting is, we've definitely seen some wildlife. At one point we see troopers fighting fire beetles, and then Cal fights some large spiders, at one point fighting two at a time, and at another time getting jumped. At the end of the gameplay footage, we see Cal trying to free some Wookiees that are being kept prisoner, when he gets surprised by a KX droid. After this, we do see some montage footage of Cal fighting the droid, but it isn't gameplay at that point, it is a hopping through, so we don't know how the fighting style works there. It seems much more cinematic with this fight. And the last enemy that seems confirmed, at the end of this montage, we do see an AT-ST taking shots, but that seems to be all the enemies that we've been introduced to so far. Overall, personally, I'm very excited to see what Star Wars Fallen Order has to offer. Recently I have been playing Sekiro and I'm really enjoying it, so if the combat in Fallen Order is Sekiro or Sekiro Light, because From Software are doing what From Software do, but someone else trying it out may not work so well. But I'm definitely excited to play the game. So whether you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the game, let me know if you're excited to play it. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And if you want to see more content from me, hit that subscribe button, and that way you'll be able to see every time I am uploading. If you want to see my live reactions to some more E3, then go to twitch.tv/thegrumpybrit. There'll be a link in the description. Over there, me, Grumps, and Taylor will be reacting to stuff live and on the spot in the same stream. So if you're a fan of the GGW podcast, then that is definitely the place to watch your E3. But thank you once again for dropping in with me and sticking out the video. I do really appreciate you guys being here, and I will see you guys next time.